Kia ora guys, welcome back. In today's video I'm going to be doing a murder mystery style video. I'm going to be playing with the CXC Beauty's Bloomstruck palette. I just want to put a warning out there to First Nations and Indigenous people that there are images of people that have passed away in this video. So yeah, just keep that in mind. I'm also talking about some really triggering things, like quite some horrible things. Doing the research for this video, I was so astounded, baffled, and just completely confused by some of the things, but you'll see what I mean when I get there. Yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go away and do my base, and then I'm going to come back and I'm actually going to do everything else, you know, and we'll be talking about all this. And it's a long story, so get ready. I'll be back. I've done my base, done all that. I'll list everything below, like I usually do. Yeah, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to play and dip into this. I'm going to kind of go for the greens here, and I think I might do a pink. I don't know, maybe. We'll see. But yeah, so what we're going to do first is I'm just going to kind of do it, and you can see what I do. But yeah, so talking about this case, researching it was horrific. I couldn't believe it, what I was reading. It was crazy. So Daniel Morcombe was a happy but shy 13-year-old boy from the Sunshine Coast in Queensland. He lived with his parents, Bruce and Denise, his twin brother and another brother, so 3 boys. His parents owned a gardening business here in the Sunshine Coast in Queensland. Now, in Queensland, we've got a place called Jim's, a company called Jim's Mowing, and he owned one of those. So yeah, you know, and they lived in a rural property, Palms Woods, Sunshine Coast, as I said. So not a huge area, not a huge community, but still good. On December 7th, 2003, Daniel actually left his home to go to the bus stop to go to shopping, getting Christmas presents actually for his mother, which is quite sweet. It's only a short walk. Now it's called Kill Mountain Road. Now I believe it's only about 5 minutes from his house, from what I could work out. And you know, keep in mind he had done this walk many times, going to school, all that sort of thing. So you know, it's not like it was a new road for him. So he was going to the Sunshine Plaza, as I said, to buy some presents for his mother for Christmas. Now, on this particular day, he had asked his brothers to go with him, and they all said no. They had other plans. They didn't want to. Now, this is where this is all I could actually find out about the backstory of Daniel, by the way. But this is where things go bad. So, Daniel was waiting at the bus stop, and driving down the road was a man named Brett Cowan. Brett Cowan was a nasty piece of work. Now, we'll just keep there. So, a little bit of background on Brett that I could find out. So, he was the third of 4 boys. His mum was a homemaker and part-time waitress, barmaid, whatever you want to call her. Dad was a major in the Australian Army. Now, from what I could find out, they lived in a very staunch Catholic lifestyle, so very strict. You know, his dad ruled the house with an iron fist. But at the same time, he also suffered from PTSD and anxiety due to his job and his career, and he travelled a lot because of it. Well, for work anyway. So that kept him away from the home a lot. Now the boys, all 4 boys went to Mount Mercier College here in Brisbane on the south side. Now, according to reports, one of Brett Cowan's teachers actually said he was a bit of a bully and would often wave his erections around and was generally despised by his classmates. Now, Brett was also bullied in school. So, typical case of the bullied being the bullier. Now, where am I? Now, he actually dropped out of high school in year 10. So I don't know what that is. So year 10, I believe it's about 14 or 15. So he dropped out of school quite young, did not finish it, didn't graduate anything. But he picked up odd jobs here and there, you know, doing a bit of this and a bit of that. But he couldn't keep a job. So yeah, a couple months maybe, but after that he'd be moved on. Yeah. So he was also struggling with his sexuality. So from what I could find out, from a young age he struggled with being bisexual. But this, you know, because of his struggles and his internal battles, things escalated for him and he ended up turning to petty crime. You know, he got his first criminal conviction at the age of 17. He was also using drugs such as LSD, methamphetamines, crack, anything he could get his hand on. He later stated in an interview that the LSD and the methamphetamine, he liked them because they fuck up your inhibitions and, you know, just generally lower your boundaries. Now, that was a quote. So, Brett was no stranger to the law. He got several convictions, spent time in prison for a variety of things, including sexual offences. Now, jump a few years, in 1997, Brett was actually released from prison where he went to live with his aunt and uncle. Now, his uncle was a pastor in a local church, so, you know, they thought they could help him. Which, I wish they could. I need a different brush. You know, Brett claimed to become a reformed Christian. He alleged to have changed his ways and all that sort of thing. But in 1998, the then 20-year-old Brett Cowan actually moved into the suburb of Biwa. Beerwyn in the Sunshine Coast with a lady he had met at the church, Tracy Lee something, another churchgoer anyway. The two were married the following year, so quite a fast courtship. Now this marriage actually produced 2 sons. So Brett was now married, 2 kids, goes to church, lovely, you know. And it stayed like this for a while, you know. A good 5 years, I think, I read. About 5 years. And, you know, he was going to church, he was doing the family thing, being the good family man, all that sort of thing. But things started to change in 2003. Now, Brett stopped going to church. His wife stopped going as well. Now, this is where things start taking a turn for him. You know, he stopped going to church. They split, ending in divorce, with Tracy actually ending up with sole custody of both children, with Cowan actually not having any rights. It's during this time that Brett was driving down a road and spotted Daniel. Now, the bus stop that Daniel, you know, so Daniel was at the bus stop, but it was an unofficial bus stop. So we have those here in Australia. It was under an overpass. Now, witnesses reported seeing Daniel at the bus stop at about 2:10 in the afternoon. Daniel had actually planned on catching the 1:35 bus, but due to some reason, the bus had broken down or whatever. When the replacement eventually did arrive, it drove straight past Daniel. And because it was not an official bus stop, so he didn't have to stop. However, the driver did notify the base and ask another bus to stop by and collect Daniel. Other witnesses reported seeing 2 men near Daniel. However, not 3 minutes later, when the replacement bus arrived, Daniel and the men were not to be seen. They were nowhere. So, in quick succession, you know, the replacement arrived within, 5 minutes? After a few hours, Bruce and Denise were getting worried. Now remember, that's Daniel's mother and father. They were getting worried because Daniel hadn't come home. So they contacted the police reporting Daniel missing. Now in Australia you don't need to wait 24 hours like you do in, I think, America. You need to wait 24 hours. So by December 15th, 2 days later, Daniel had still not shown up and there was no evidence of him. Now, there was no witnesses seeing him after vanishing from the bus stop. At this time, the government had actually put up a reward of $250,000, and a private donor had also put up a reward of $750,000. So there's a $1 million reward out for Daniel at this point, and it's only been a couple of days. Now, it was at this point that it came out that a known pedophile under the name of Douglas Jackway was now being investigated and suspected as, as a suspect, Now, Jackway had been released from prison just 1 month prior to Daniel disappearing. Now, he was actually a known pedophile, so he was released. Now, this is where the government failed, because Queensland government did not notify anybody that he was being released, and against the Supreme Court's suggestion, he was released because the Supreme Court still deemed him as a great risk to the community, which is insane. But yeah, so Daniel is what's his name? Douglas has been released into the community. Unfortunately, this prompted, fortunately, this actually prompted a civil liberty group to call for laws to protect, unfortunately I should say, what am I saying? Unfortunately, this protected a civil liberties group to call for laws to protect suspects from being named in the media. Now, I can understand that to a degree, but girl, please. At the same time, if you are being accused of these heinous crimes, or you're guilty of these just despicable acts towards human beings, really, I don't have a lot of sympathy for you. Everything had kind of gone stale with the investigation. There was no new leads turning up, nothing like that. So everything kind of stalled for 3 years with no leads, no tips, nothing. Everything seemed to be in limbo. That was until July 2019 when Denise and Bruce Morcombe were called to a Coronal hearing, I think they call it, inquest. I can't. The coroner and all that, and they basically discussed, coronal inquests are public hearings held to examine the case and circumstances surrounding somebody's death, generally held in a coroner's court. On 13th of August 2011, up at this point there had been 23 hearing days. So now the reason the Morcombe family were called into the coroner's court is because there'd been chatter in the criminal world about, people knowing who killed Daniel or where his body was, that sort of thing. So that sparked a bit of interest from the officials, or the, investigators and all that. Now, the inquest into Daniel's suspected death commenced on 11th of October 2010. On the 13th of August 2011, so we're going nearly a year, there had been 23 hearing days. And evidence that had been taken at the time of Daniel's disappearance, taken at the time of this inquest, and from over 60 witnesses, including police officers, eyewitnesses, persons of interest, their associates. So at this point, the QPS, which is the Queensland Police, they had identified 33 persons of interest. Now, in relation to Daniel's disappearance, but after the inquest, that list was dropped to 6, and 6 that they would be called in to give further evidence, interviewed, interrogated a bit more, that sort of thing. Now, one of the 6 that were called was Brett Cowan. So the thing we've got to know about him is he's trying to break into these criminal worlds and be the big gangster. Now, when he was called in, he was the only person whom the allegation of killing Daniel had been pointed at, and it was put directly to him. When the inquest adjourned in 2011. The only request was that Cowan give further oral evidence, making him the #1 suspect in Daniel's disappearance. So as an outcome of this inquest and further questioning on August the 13th, the police actually did an intensive undercover sting, which led to the arrest of Brett Cowan, and they charged him with a list of offences including murder, kidnapping, indecent treatment of a child under 16, and the list goes on. I'm not going to mention them because some of them are absolutely disgusting. Like, Jesus, it made me scrinkle. It was horrible. Now, after this inquest and this further interviewing of Brett Cowan, the police actually went back through previous interviews they had done with Cowan, where he admitted to police that he had travelled along Kyle Mountain Road on his way to purchase marijuana from his drug dealer on the day of the disappearance. Now, Cowan confessed to having seen Daniel and approached Daniel to offer him a lift to the shopping centre. Now, he had actually parked his car nearby. It was around this time that a white Mitsubishi Pajero was actually being seized in a property on Russell Island. Now, that's about 150 kilometres or 94 miles from where Daniel actually disappeared. Witnesses of the Coronal inquest report seeing a vehicle similar to this description parked 100 metres or 300 so feet north of the site where Daniel was last seen. Now, it's here where the Queensland Police Service, or the QPS, resumes the investigation. Now, things aren't looking good for the Queensland Police at this point, because it's come out in the inquest that when Cowan admitted to seeing Daniel, it was, and telling him that, you know, he was off to buy weed and all this sort of thing, it was never looked into and it was never challenged. Now, the shoes that the police found were reportedly similar to the ones that Daniel was wearing when he disappeared. Now, at the same time, police also found underwear and a belt that was... But what was a belt. But what was missing was actually a distinctive fob watch that Daniel also carried. And to this day has still not been found. By the end of the investigation, 17 bones had been found, all being linked to Daniel and verified by a DNA test. So, at this point, the Morcombe family can finally lay Daniel to rest. Now, the funeral was attended by over 2,000 people on the 7th of December 2011. Now, jump forward 3 years. So we're now in 2014. On February the 10th, 2014, the trial for Cowan started. Now, he was charged with a list of offences, as I said before. So he was charged with murder, indecently dealing with a child under the age of 16, inappropriately dealing with a corpse. Now, the prosecution closed its case on March 7th, so not a long trial. Now, it's 116 witnesses gave evidence and over 200 exhibits were tendered in evidence. Now, on March 13th, 2014, Brett Cowan was found guilty on all charges. He was sentenced to life in prison with the chance of parole after 20 years. I've got my thoughts on that. He was also sentenced to 3.5 years for indecently dealing with Daniel, for 2 years for interfering with a corpse, and those sentences are served concurrently. The judge actually said, "I don't think you should be released in 20 years' time," which could actually affect Cowan's prison term. Now, Cowan appealed his sentence, obviously. I think they automatically happen. To the Queensland Court of Appeals, seeking to have his conviction overturned. His legal team argued that the confession elicited through the undercover sting by the police was inadmissible as evidence. Now, in Australia, we don't have entrapment laws like you do in the US and some other countries. So on 21st of May 2015, Brett Cowan's appeal was dismissed. Now, after Daniel's murder, Denise and Bruce Morcombe actually started the Daniel Morcombe Foundation. Now, that's to give back to the community who had supported them from the day that Daniel went missing. Now, today, the Daniel Morcombe Foundation is one of the most well-known not-for-profit child safety organisations in Australia. Daniel's story has changed child safety in Australia, and the determination and dedication of his parents has inspired a whole nation. Now, in Australia, on the last Friday of October every year, we have Day for Daniel, which is when everybody wears a red shirt or dresses up in red. Now, this red shirt actually symbolises the red shirt that Daniel was wearing the day he was last seen. And it is to bring awareness of child safety, all that sort of thing. And in recent years, it has morphed to online safety for cyber predators and all that sort of thing. So the aftermath of Daniel's murder has been quite changing for Australia as a whole. It's a case that gripped the nation. I personally still remember it. It was crazy, yeah. And it was just horrible. Some of the things that I've left out of this case, if you want to go and look into it, you can. But oh my god, it made my skin crawl. Yeah, I couldn't deal with it. Yeah, it was quite horrific. Nobody should have to go through that. I'm just going to put a bit of setting spray on. Yeah, so that actually concludes my first ever murder mystery. If you liked it, let me know. Because, yeah. I'm going to link all my products that I use down below. All that sort of thing. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.